Vanakkam. Hello. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're calling from, joining us from. Welcome. I am PMC Chandrasekhar PM, your host for today. I have immense pleasure in welcoming you all to this special event from ICF Chennai Charter Chapter. The name of the event is Vision, Values, and Volunteer Leadership. Before we dive into this, please visit the chat box, say hello to fellow participants, tell us where you are joining from, and then we will take on from there. Hyderabad, Chennai, yes, Hyderabad, again Chennai, Gurgaon, DC, fantastic, welcome, Malaysia, Bangalore, very good, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Hosur, beautiful, Chennai, Bengaluru. Okay, while we wait for others to join, I have a question for all of you. Please put your responses in the chat box. The question I want you to think about and answer me is, what brings you here today? What brings you here today is the question. Please share your thoughts on the chat box. Content, purpose, to learn. Learning, Zoom. Zoom is the vehicle. What is your internal drive to come here, George Cherian? I guess, unless you mean zooming in your career or in coaching, right? Okay, learning, understand the ICF and networks, superb. Theme of the workshop is inviting, yes, the topic, leadership values, listen. Most difficult thing to do for many people, to get a different perspective. Yes, connect. What diversity. Interesting session as always, an awesome panel. Thank you. To meet folks, Vijay and Udaya. Okay, great. Networking, volunteer leadership of Vijay. Reflect, curious, learn. Curious, leadership, progress. Wow. Superb. Please keep it coming. I will go through it again. We have to get on with the program as it is. After some time, I will be posting a background, Zoom background for you to use today. It could be those who like it can download and use it. It is useful for the photo session, which is coming up later. Actually, before we jump in and immerse ourselves in the program, the contents, as all of you have indicated here, eagerly looking forward to what Uday and Vijay have to share with all of us. I'm as eager as you are, in fact, but I have to go through certain logistics as it is. This program, today's session qualifies for Resource Development CCU EU for 1.5 units. The agenda today is very simple. I'm going to share some thoughts of myself very briefly on the topic. Then it's open to the dialogue between Uday and Vijay, which will be followed up by a question and answer session. We would love to give more time. Let's see how it goes out. We will maybe we'll ask some of you to talk directly, and some of the questions from the chat box also I can take it up. I will give. We will see how it goes, and I will place instructions over there. After that, we'll have a photo session, and then we close. That's the agenda, logistics part I wanted to tell you. Now let's come to the event itself. Why is this event called special event by us? We have had several labels, but why is this special? Vision and values are very familiar to all of us. Any strategy textbook or organization development book has that. as a way of reaching the vision, reaching the goals. Leadership is always talked about, and there are millions and millions have been written on pages have been written on leadership. When we talk about this volunteer leadership, I tried to search for some material as to what exactly the whole thing is about. Surprisingly, I found none or very little. I was lucky to have located a paper of 2018 publication, I remember, if I'm right. The researchers say that there is hardly any literature on volunteer leadership. While the leadership has quite a lot of coverage, textbooks, articles, and so on, volunteer leadership has not had that benefit yet. Now you might ask me, what is the fixation about volunteer leadership? Why are we really bothered about that? Just let us take a look around what's been happening in the past few years or in the past decade. I have noticed that apart from the senior people, a lot of people in the middle-age group and youngsters are coming out to help others voluntarily. You could have seen this in any disaster that has happened. Like I'm talking to you from Chennai. When there has been a huge unprecedented flood a few years ago, people poured from all over the country. They sent material, they came themselves to work, rescue people by the boats and things like that. When there is a call for donation, there are enough people who do donations. There are several non-profits and NGOs who are working very successfully and very seriously and very sincerely. There are professional and industry associations where the positions are only honorary, not a single penny as a compensation, and they do take a lot of time and your expertise. The question is, volunteerism to me seems to be on the rise. And unfortunately, we do not have too much of literature for us to fall back upon to regularize or to promote this. I'm not saying regularize, to promote this. The question that comes into your mind is also that what drives this kind of a voluntarism among people? And it also says, the paper also says, and we also know that in general, when you talk about leadership, it's a unidirectional, top to bottom, command control system. There is an authority, there is a system, there is a reward and punishment when something goes wrong. Therefore, it's automatically geared to listen to the leader and follow the leader. But in volunteer leadership, all these are absent. Nobody is higher or more powerful than the other person. So it's literally a 360 degree. There is no command control, there is no authority. Diversity of people is very high in terms of age, experience in any demographic you talk about. And in delivering your services, you have to make do with your personal infrastructure. The organization doesn't have any infrastructure per se. So these are the simple nuances of volunteer leadership, which I can think of as against leadership. So what do we do when there is no literature to discuss the further nuances? And is there a theory at all? And how do people get motivated to do this? And what should a volunteer leader be like? What are the do's and don'ts? So what makes people to take up this kind of a position where, the general rule is that people take the path of least resistance. But in volunteerism, we don't do that. We do take the hard way out and for no apparent gain for ourselves. So to understand this a little better, we need to dissect and analyze as to all those questions that you've seen on the promotion. What makes it tick? What are the skills required and what do we do? And things like that. In the absence of theory, in the absence of textbook, what do we do? We turn to experience. We go to people who have demonstrated volunteer leadership in their lives, in their careers, and ask questions, listen to their experience, ask questions, listen to their answers, reflect upon them. upon those answers and find a path for ourselves. That's the idea. We listen to their insights, and from those people who are accomplished in volunteerism and who are worthy of our listening to. So in that sense, today, we are here to discuss vision, values, and volunteer leadership. And my pleasant job today is to introduce two diamonds who will take us through, share with us, and their experiences and perspectives. And we will learn from their experience. The first of the diamonds that I am talking about is Vijayalakshmi S, MCC MP, popularly known as Vijay. Hello, Vijay.
Hi there, PMC. Diamond and all that, okay.
Yeah, you will feel convinced when I finish this portion.
Okay.
Vijay is the president of ICF Chennai Charter Chapter. She is an experienced master coach and mentor, MCC, ICF, and MP from EMCC, with 3,000 plus hours of coaching experience, specialties including executive, leadership, wellness, and conflict coaching. And she has worked with individuals, teams, and businesses. She has a rich background in human resources and law. He is an accredited mediator and a credentialed systemic and team coach. Her first career track includes HR roles, the longest one of 9 years in Hindustan Unilever, before she ventured on her own in consulting and coaching. Vijay is the founder of a venture coach consultant based in Chennai, offering integrated coaching and management consulting practice, partnering with individuals, teams, leaders, and businesses. With her guiding belief as play at full potential, she has gained deep insights into leadership practices as they happen on the ground. On volunteer leadership, she has had an enviable track record and accomplishments. In the space of International Coaching Federation, I'm going chronologically. Chronologically, it may look here and there, so just take the list. President, ICF Chennai Charter Chapter. The chapter incidentally has won 2021 Chapter Excellence Awards from ICF Global. She's been the president since November 2020, which is a member of ICF Credentials and Standards, C&S Scheme Committee from July 2022 till present date. Subject matter expert, volunteer, ICF, same group, ICF C&S, since May 2022 to June 2022. Chair of ICF India Conclave 2021, Coaching for Growth, ITOS, December 2020 to August 2021. This is a responsibility which involved leadership of cross-cultural, diverse, and dispersed team of volunteers, vendors, partners, and stakeholder management. President-elect ICF Chennai Chapter, October 2019-2020, October 2020. Director, Membership and Member Experience, ICF Chennai Chapter, September 2018 to October 2020. It's almost 5 years of full-time work with ICF Chennai. Then, Coaches for You, pro bono coaching initiative of the professional coaching community that came into existence in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. She is the founding volunteer leader from March 2020 till present. National HRD Network, she has been the honorary vice president, Chennai Chapter 2011 to 13, executive committee member, NHRD Chennai Chapter 2009 to 15. That's a 6 long years. Her accomplishments include, as a chair of ICF India Conclave 2021, she pulled it off successfully, fighting extreme odds during the height of COVID-19 pandemic. And for this performance, she has been awarded highly commended special recognition in the EMCC Global Coaching Awards 2021 for serving as chair of that conclave. And she is also the first recipient of ICF India Coaching Excellence Guru Award 2022. Let me take a breath, my dear friends. With such a positive fusion of her education, work experience, coaching practice, and a deep volunteer service track record, Vijay has all the credentials to share with us her rich experience and learnings today. Now, I talked about diamond. Now the second diamond. Why diamond? Only a diamond can cut another diamond, and a diamond can shape another diamond. So that's a reference. Udayakumar Gopalakrishnan MCC MP, fondly known as Uday for all of us, is an accomplished and sought-after leadership coach, OD consultant, facilitator, and keynote speaker based in Chennai, India. His work assignments have spanned across India, USA, Canada, Singapore, UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa. He has been conferred with reputed credentials such as MCC from ICF USA, Master Practitioner EMCC Belgium, Certified Professional Coach, International Coach Academy Australia, Accredited Debriefer and Coach, Harrison Assessment International USA, and EQ Fellow and Assessor, 6 Seconds USA. He is a founder and CEO of the Dream Venture Core Mind, established in 1993, after having held senior HR roles in Murugappa and Rane Group for 11 years. During the last 29 years, Uday has influenced corporate houses and leaders alike to navigate and overcome complex challenges with courage, felicity, and poise. He models extraordinary intrinsic motivation while equipping clients and participants to augment leadership capabilities and personal mastery. His track record encompasses collaboration with, hold your breath, 600 plus diverse organizations and transformation of more than 33,000 corporate professionals. That's roughly 1,000 per year and more than that. As a change agent, Uday has masterfully practiced integrative thinking by demonstrating consummate ease in working simultaneously on seemingly paradoxical poles such as cognition and intuition, as well as analysis and emotions. As a keen and continuous learner himself, Uday has attended more than 25 workshops focused on leadership, OD, mentoring, and coaching with Tavistock Institute of HR UK, NTL Institute, Franklin Covey, Center for Creative Leadership, Perron Ambrose Associates, Giant Impact, and University of Michigan, all at the USA. Uday has completed OD certification track with the NTL Institute and co-facilitated workshops at the USA as their institute and faculty member. As a means of sharing and giving, he has authored 3 seminal management books titled What It Takes to Be a Leader with Passion, Pause with Questions and Scout for Answers, Stay on the Road to Mastery, which have been receiving rave reviews. On the personal side, he is an avid follower of cricket, tennis, loves listening to melodious songs and reading. Now, this is two diamonds, 2 titans. I'm not going to call it a battle of titans. I'm going to talk about the dialogue between titans. Over to you, Uday.
Well, thank you, PMC, for this warm, touching introduction. Diamonds are forever, and that's what one of the James Bond movies was titled. And we have in the audience, I'm sure, all of them without exception being diamonds in several unique ways to be here today, as well as be in the world. I'm delighted and honored, humbled by the loving and encouraging presence of all of you. I understand there's a very diverse group, aspirant, established coaches, corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, those working in NGOs and PVOs. Well, this is a specially curated fireside chat. I'm sure you'd experience enriching takeaways from the word go till the end. Namaste. Welcome, all of you, from the bottom of my heart and folded hands. Vijay, I'm very thrilled and excited to co-partner in this minuscule journey of life in the next 90 odd minutes, or less than 90 minutes since PMC has given the introduction part. How has this last week been for you? And how has this day been for you?
Thank you, Uday. I can just see the master coach in you asking me the right question. Thank you so much. Before that, I jump in. I just want to say I feel so loved and so connected in this. It's a large group that I don't know, for some reason I'm feeling deeply connected and feeling very encouraged to share whatever I want to with honesty. And I think that's the theme for me today. Can I really be honest with myself and with everybody here today, and really do justice to a topic of this nature? I feel very inspired and encouraged with the presence of so many like-minded people. I mean, investing this kind of time on a working day is not easy. So thanks to everyone. I see a lot of friends. I see a lot of people I look up to here in the audience. So somebody mentioned that, the word intimidation. So I'm not feeling intimidated, but I'm really wondering, I think sooner than later, I should bring everybody here onto the stage and join us in the dialogue. So that's the other thing, my friends here today, to all of you. Let this be a co-created dialogue. Of course, the spotlight is on me and Uday, but let's have a large systemic dialogue today in any way possible, because of the technology. So with that sort of opening remarks, coming back to your question, and I wasn't ducking that, Uday. I really wanted to answer that.
You wouldn't.
Yeah, so let's start with my day first. And I think I messaged you today because I was really not able to have a conversation like the way I would have wanted to today. It's been a bit of a crazy day, so to say. So I'm really happy that everything has fallen into place. Why? Because technology decided to play a bit of spoilsport today, and this event is only possible because of technology, right? I mean, I'm seeing my friends here from Malaysia and DC and everywhere. Imagine if the Zoom was not there, right? What would happen to this session? I really don't know. And so we did have a Zoom snag, right? A huge issue. And this morning, instead of sort of centering myself and coming into the space as I had told you, that was the plan, right? The good plan. I didn't have work today. There was no coaching calls, nothing. This topic was just too important. This moment was just too important for me to invest that, right? You can't show up in a public stage until you have a dialogue with yourself. So I was trying to have that. So the day my calendar was blank and, only for this. And this morning we spent close to 3 hours resolving this issue. Yeah. So boom, today was like challenge. So I really had to bring myself back and do whatever needed to be done.
Good. I'm relieved with all the hard efforts we could succeed eventually. Well, about myself, I'm composed and very upbeat now in this moment. But life being a share of ups and downs, joys and sorrows, I had shared a big disappointment today. But then, recently overcoming that, I wouldn't claim the space of the group to talk about that now, but I'm quite upbeat at this point in time. Well, I've known you, Vijay, since the year 2000. And closely interacted with you in XLRI and NHRDN forums prior to getting into the space of coaching along with you. I've experienced tremendous growth and transformation in you over the years, and I'm very proud about what you are today and what you're aspiring to be more of you. Although this friendship dates back to 2+ decades, I experienced you really as a volunteer leader in the last 2+ years. When you donned roles in ICF Chennai Chapter, CFI, and also the ICF India Conclave 2021, which PMC talked about a little while ago. So the large part of this dialogue, I would possibly, steer it, navigate around those leadership roles where you had direct experiences. But that would not stop you and me for getting into some dips into nostalgia, beyond or before that point in time. But before I move you into the deep end of the pool, I would, reinforce what you said now. Glad you talked about it. It's about volunteer leadership, and therefore the highs and the lows, the successes and the fiascos. And you want to be authentic, and I've always experienced as very authentic, and I'm sure this is going to be a very fitting session for all in the audience as well as for us. We'll therefore ask you deliberative questions about episodes which were highs and lows. And I prefer a free-flowing conversation, pick it up as it goes. But to bring in some structure, I would have some, questions which would provoke you, stimulate you, energize you. The first question that I have before we move to the deep end of the pool, can you tell me what's the larger intent of this dialogue?
Wow. I think, so you and I were both architects of making this session happen, right? So in a way we were back-ending, and also we're sort of actors in today's piece. And if you go back to our conversations, I think there have been many times when you and I would even say a lot of like-minded people in this room and beyond, who've kind of had this conversation saying, hey, what gets you going? Why are you doing all these things? What sense does it make? Right? And it's not that I've not reflected on these, but never really found a chance to sort of sit down and put it all together. So I'm hoping this forum or this dialogue, because I realize there are many more people doing great things out there, right? So much to learn from, is to both share and learn about what is this, esoteric thing called volunteer leadership. And honestly, till a few years ago, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? I know PMC has mentioned that there's hardly any literature available. But the point is, I think not too many people have really cut it that way and kind of looked at it and looked at those dynamics. So I felt also that, any good experience or bad experience must be shared. So I thought this is a great forum to do that, and which is why I said it's really nice. I'm hoping that some of you here today will join me on stage, maybe towards a little later in the conversation, and share some experiences. That's one part of it. The other part of it also is, when you look at an organization like ICF or other organizations, mission-driven organizations that are out there to make a difference in the world, you can't do it without volunteers. Yeah, and you can't do it without volunteer leaders. And somewhere there's also this effort to talk about those parts of why a lot of reluctant leaders should be considering this. It's not hard sell. I know our chapter, elections are coming up, and I sent this mail this morning asking people to put up their hands and come and join the team. It's also near end of my term as president, but it's not that. It's not just that, right? But it's about this larger thoughts thinking that, can we always have a huge pool of people wanting to take the organization, the mission, and the great dreams forward. So there's that objective too, I would think.
But in a way, you sort of responded to one question which I wanted to ask, but still, let me share what it was. It's about the ideal outcomes at the end of the session. So let me move on to the next one. How would you know this large intent and the strategic vision which you're talking about, which I've heard you speak about number of occasions, number of other forums too? How would you know that this would be accomplished? Not just another session, but a few weeks, few months, years down the line.
I almost feel like we're running through the coaching competencies of that. No wonder, I'm so excited to be in conversation with a master coach and getting this free coaching session. Thank you, Uday. But great question again. And that's the question most clients struggle with in coaching, right? I mean, when you ask them the outcome question, they're like, I don't know. So my answer, I would love to say I don't know, but I think I do know. And of course, there will be feedback at the end of the session, right? I mean, so I think that you and I are not here for you and I, right? I mean, we are here for this larger collective. And I saw in the chat box, a lot of people are here together today to learn, right? There's that curiosity to take away something that's meaningful, valuable. And for me today, one outcome will really be on what everybody is feeling at the end of this conversation, right? Is there something, one little thing that you walked away with, right? And I would love that feedback. But I think more importantly, these are all drops in the ocean, Uday. And you know, we see that happening even as coaches, right? Somebody writes back to us 5 years, 10 years later saying, you know, that one conversation we had, you know, over tea and, you know, whatever, cookies in that thing, that kind of propelled me to do A, B, and C. So for me, I get very excited about this, what's the word, this spiraling sort of effect, you know, this ripple effect, where something can actually sort of have that multiplicative impact. And so if out of today's session we can have, you know, more volunteer leaders who commit to that, saying that, hey, you know what, I'm going to start making this difference, or let me sort of do, or, you know, let's bring this idea to life. And you and I may never know about it, but I think that to me will be real impact of that.
Good. I can very closely connect with you, Vijay, on this, because I've also had experience of folks getting back after many years, saying that what seemed to be relevant at that time, what seemed theoretical at that time, really is very meaningful and purposeful in life too. So to the audience, I have a request. While I engage Vijay in this very focused dialogue, I'd like you to, and request you to deeply reflect some of the, if not all, the open-ended questions that are posed to Vijay. Consider as though, this is my invitation, consider as though you're asking to yourself. And we'll do my best to unplug Vijay and to help you become more aware and inspired about the volunteer leader roles, and be free to continue the engagement in the chat box and PMC. Vijay and I would pick it up towards the end. Having said this, Vijay, I heard this introduction about PMC telling you about you saying that you did law and then did HR. Very interesting combination. I knew that, but now it's coming back to me to ask this question. Did in any way some sort of volunteer leader role emerge for you? Maybe as a student, maybe as a role holder or an office bearer or an activist at that point in time, because law is about defending others. You know, when you're in a lawyer's shoe, defending others' heart in cases. But somewhere down the line, it's also about expanding the reach for more people to get benefit. So if this is my tone setting for you, is this something that you want to go back and share? If there is, or there are any indicators.
Thank you, Uday. And you bring me to something that I think fills me with a lot of nostalgia. And I think it was thanks to this session, you know, as I was reflecting and preparing, that I was able to draw and connect a few threads, right? So while, for example, you know, I have these, and you know, I mean, I know it's a bit of a paradox there, which is that, you know, I mean, there are no formal roles, but yet there are formal roles in the volunteer leadership or the volunteer ecosystem, right? And some of us have that. But even before these formal roles, I think when I look back, you know, that embodiment was always there, right? In one way or the other. Because I think, you know, I think ever since growing up, for me, it would be like, okay, you know, I mean, why do I have to wait for somebody to come and do A, B, and C, right? Let me do it, right? Never a hesitation to put up my hand. You know, I mean, I used to be known as quite an enthusiastic person, but it's just not enthusiasm. I think it was something larger, right? Based on the value system, saying that, you know, I've read this somewhere. If it's got to be, it's got to be me, right? So this is not about being individualistic, but about saying that, you know, change begins with me. You know, I can be the difference. I can make that, right? I mean, I know it's a little bit of a idealistic thing, right? Almost romantic, the notion is. But genuinely, I think that's always been a driver, right? So if I look back, you know, let's say even to my school days, I know you spoke about college. I think whether it was NCC, road safety patrol, Girl Guides, you know, name it, and, you know, places where you could just go and do that little something, right? very different from actually having formal roles, right? In a school leadership kind of setup. So I think that was always there to be able to go and serve and do those things and not wait for people to kind of, do things for you. But I think law, and I want to go back, I graduated from National Law School, Bangalore, and that was an experiment in the legal fraternity, right? Because as our late director would say, we as lawyers were looked at not, people to be doing just litigation, right? But as agents of social change. What a powerful articulation, right? I mean, law is often looked at as a very commercial sort of profession where everything is done for commercial gains, but lawyers is as agents of social change. So I think that bit of activism, and that's the first thing I want to talk about. And, when I connect the dots to volunteer leadership, you need that bit of activism in you, right? To say that, hey, why not? Sort of challenge the status quo, saying, why not? Why is it not possible? Can we try this and a bit of that and something else? So I think that's been very important. And, and I think that activism really shone through. I remember, way back in college, the sports domain used to be male dominated, which I think it's probably is. And definitely we didn't have people raising their hand to be like, the leader of the sports committee or whatever, right? I mean, head that committee, which was a very coveted, prestigious position. And for me, it was like having done, the only thing I really knew was sport. I said, why not? But there was the gender narrative, right? So when I wanted to, I had well-meaning male friends who told me, hey, you know what? Generally, women don't apply for that, right? Why do you want to do that? The competition is going to be intense. Nobody will vote for you, and all those things, right? But I sort of believed that I could serve, I could make that difference, and I think I did. So that little bit of a crazy activistic streak to say, hey, why not? Right? And I think is far more required in volunteer setups than anywhere else. So I don't know whether I answered your question, but yeah, this is.
The unplugging has already begun. The discovery and the unraveling about yourself was marvelous to me to connect. And I'm sure, every one of the audience would have their own take in terms of looking back and reflecting in their lives. To be where they are today has been a lot about where they were too earlier. And I remember reading books of James Redfield, who wrote books like Celestine Prophecy, Celestine Insight, 10th Insight. It came to 11th Insight. Movies were made about his books long back in the 90s. And he talks about synchronicity, connectedness, don't dismiss coincidences, purposefulness, and all that. When I listen to you, I'm getting back into those modes of reading those books, but not just that, but also helping myself understand about why and how and what you're doing now. There's a lot of connection. Call it unconnected dots, call it hindsight, call it discovery, but then there is a lot of substantive evidence. And I'm sure this would be available to everyone in the audience too. In their own ways, intensity and degree could vary. Well, if I were to move on and ask you, are you living your dream, Vijay? And state something briefly beyond S.
I can't give you a close-ended answer, no? You're not going to accept that. Great question, Uday. I've never asked anyone that. Are you living your dream? Perhaps yes. I know I'll have to reflect on it much deeper, but perhaps yes. I think I'm inclined to say that. Why? Because, again, right, connecting the dots, somewhere across different roles, and whether personal, life roles, work roles, professional, etc., right? There was that common theme to be a force for good, right? I can say that today. I couldn't articulate it years back. Simple transactional achievements would not really excite me, right? Yeah, they were good. I was always pretty much a straight A student and, generally good like that. But I think that didn't give me as much joy as to know and to sleep well, saying that, hey, I am making a difference, right? perhaps doing some good things. So I think this concept of force for good is beautiful, right? And it's many things which I don't make meaning of, otherwise make sense to me if I connect it with that. So perhaps I think I am living the dream. But the beautiful thing about this is that the goalpost keeps changing, right? The articulation at different life stages. In your 30s, being a force for good could mean something, and then in the 40s and 50s, and I'm sure closer to retirement or whatever that is, it will be there. But at every stage, and there are two parts, right? The good is one part, and we pick that up. But I think the force is also an equally strong word. Each of us genuinely have that capacity to be, and if you look at force as a scientific concept in physics, right? I think all of us have that. So that concept of force is important, because many times I think we forget and we underplay the force that we could be. So I think, yes, Uday, and but I also know that that sort of just keeps changing every time, right, as life goes by.
I suppose in some way or the other, all of us are in a continuum of progress, growth, evolution, and therefore the dreams also evolve. And I'm a firm believer, at some point in time, the big dream starts chasing you and you start moving towards. But when you're really passionate and go beyond that initial phase, the dream pulls you.
Yeah.
And moves you around. One last question on the self in you, before I move to the other aspects of this dialogue. Without being humble, Vijay, what do you like about yourself?
This is the toughest one, Uday. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I wish I could put a lifeline out there and kind of get friends to answer that. I know a lot of friends here sitting in the question. Yeah, I mean, in the audience, John is saying, great question. John, I wish you could help me with answers, but I'm not going to duck it. Leadership is also about, I think, acknowledging yourself, your shortcomings, and you first got to like yourself, right? You got to like who you see in the mirror every morning. You can't do anything if you don't see that person you're seeing in the mirror. And there have been days where I've not liked what I've seen in the mirror. I don't mean just literally, right? But just to answer your question, I would say a couple of things that come to my mind are, perhaps I think I like my sincerity with it. And whether good or bad, I think I'm sincere about everything I do. And I know that's a very old-fashioned thing to say, but I think I like that. I think I'm also uncomplicated. I'm a rather simple soul. So which I think allows me to just sort of jump in, do things, and just not be bothered about consequences.
So
yeah. I think simplicity. Yeah. Sorry,
Uday. When I listen to you, you're not just awesome, but also flawsome. In a sense, you embrace all what you are, and at the same time, also willing to go that extra mile. Sincerity, yes, a double tick, multi-ticks for you, because I've experienced that many number of times. Well, if I were to go further in this dialogue, what really motivated you to be, or rather taking on these volunteer leadership roles in ICF Chennai Chapter, ICF India Conclave, CFI? If you can weave around these three institutions, what brought out the best in you and what motivated you to really render possibly beyond whatever you could fathom by way of imagination when you started off?
Thank you, Uday. And I'll take a couple of minutes to just sort of travel down a little bit of trip down memory lane. So I request everyone to bear with me if I ramble a bit, but I think it's better than to just sort of look for trends and patterns yet, right? Let me just flow with what I do remember. I think with ICF, actually, let me start with NHRD, right? And I must talk about that because, and in fact, I saw a few friends from NHRD here. I got very excited to see that. I think my sort of, so I kind of just moved out, or I was moving out of my corporate role and a big sort of innings at Unilever, which is an organization I'm tremendously proud to call myself an alumna of. That was a time when I was at a bit of a crossroad and, certain personal milestones as well, right? I had 2 little kids at that point of time. And I was in a bit of a break, so to say, not ever fully. I think as professionals, it's hard to take full breaks. I still don't understand. I mean, I've not experienced that concept because you're always doing something. You can't just switch on and switch off, I think. So that was the time when I think I got, I was sort of getting to meet more people, more HR people. When you're so much in the thick of a role in a job, it gets very difficult to do that, right? I mean, very, very authentic sort of getting to know people, apart from, the typical networking, right? Just genuine friendships, getting to know people. So I was doing that. And that's when I came into the NHRD world, right? I just joined as, as a member, as a volunteer. And I remember way back in 2018, we had like the ICF India Conclave, a huge conference, which was the national conference that Chennai team was hosting. And I was not even part of the executive committee at that point of time, but a few good friends, some from XLRI and others who pulled me in, sort of said, hey, why don't you? So I would just go and be one volunteer somewhere there. But that's when I realized that there's a big difference between doing what you're asked to do and being sincere and true and giving what you're capable of. And I realized that I had a lot of strengths that I could bring in because in Unilever, I would literally organize like 5 conferences a year, right? I mean, I would joke around and say, okay, if nothing else works out, I will become a top class event manager, right? And so I said, hey, I can do much more than this. Why am I holding back? So what if I'm on a sort of break, right? So I jumped in, and before I realized, I just got into that ecosystem. And the thing about me, I think, is I think I can settle down into ecosystems, find my place, find my space in those systems. And before I realized it, I had this invitation to join the committee. And I said, no, that's too soon. I mean, but again, like in coaching, there were people who saw that and they said, I think you can. And I said, why not? I didn't really think about anything else. So I think that was the draw with NHRD, saying that, okay, I've been an accomplished HR leader. Now, what do I do with all this knowledge, right? Knowledge, and I've heard this way back when I was growing up, right? Knowledge restricted to one person never multiplies. Knowledge shared becomes amazing and it comes back to you in one way or the other. So eventually you will be the gainer, right? Any which way you look at it. By giving, you never become poorer. You just become richer. I think I've seen that in multiple instances in life. So that was really with NHRD. And then one thing led to the other. And I said, okay, now let me serve another term. And then I said, okay, let me get on to be an office bearer. And then I kind of took charge of all events and engagement for NHRD. And then I said, okay, let me be vice president, put up my hand for that as well. So one thing led to that before I realized it was 6 years. But those 6 years, I was also tremendously fortunate to work with people who were professional, but who also gave so generously, right? And they were very, very big on raising the bar. So that was also a time I was entering the world of coaching. I mean, in a formal sort of sense, right? Getting into the ICF Chennai Chapter, which I remember at that point of time was not even 20 members. This was sometime in 2017, I think, But the chapter again welcomed me with warmth and open arms and said, okay. And with ICF Chennai, I'm going to be very honest here, right? When I came in, I saw an ecosystem that had so much tremendous potential and was not out there. right? Was not visible, was not sort of, didn't really have its brand, was not a place people were coming to. And, but I saw that potential. So even before, and people on earlier, the older members in Chennai can attest to that. I would land up at every meeting, right? Trying to do my little bit. And I was not on a board. I was on nothing, right? And I remember, the first level coach. I was an ACC coach at that point of time. So perhaps these things start when you notice and you're not happy with what you're noticing. Change starts there, right? Change always starts with pain points. We say when we talk about customers, right? Innovation, change, the pain point is, so I did see those pain points. And I said, why? Why should Chennai not be out there? Why are we so few people? Why are we not big? And that was when I was thinking, hey, you know what? I've learned so much in NHRD, right? And there again, we saw huge growths, right? From being an organization that did not even have its office. We did some great work. We made that much of, built the finances, and that we actually bought a permanent office. And I remember that I was involved in that entire property deal, getting and ensuring that our assets were growing, right? So I said, if NHRD can, or, if that can be the journey, why not ICF? Right? So that's where it started. And that was also around the point of time, a year later, when I was in the process of becoming a master coach, doing that. And I think when the whole mastery thing came through, right? I mean, my credential, mastery can never come through. Credential. I said, what is the use of me being a master coach if I'm not going to find a way to give it back, right? What happens to all this wisdom? Master coach is not just for the way you coach, right? And Uday, you hold an EMCC credential as well. One of the questions we put in our EMCC mastery application is, what is the contribution you've made to society? What a powerful question, right? So as a coach, you're expected to do that, to call yourself that. And while I'm talking about MCCs, it's possible at every level. So that was when I had this invitation. I said, okay, let me pick what I'm really good at, which is community building, which is organization building. And I said, let me do like the tough portfolio. And I know Babu Raj is here. I'll put up my hand for membership, right? Membership role is like a little bit of a sales role in this kind of an organization, right? But you can never hard sell. You can never do pull. It's a push. It's always pull, right? But I said, let me do it. And for me, I was not happy this chapter having, single digit members, right? People did not even have membership IDs. It was a very nice, familial, cozy, very lovely community, right? But I think that was not enough. So I said, why can't this chapter be like, 5x? And that did happen, Uday, at the end of that tenure. I mean, and I'm not sort of saying this, as something to talk about as an achievement. But the point I'm trying to say is, when something troubles you, and throw that in with a bit of optimism, great things happen. And today, I think ICF Chennai is at about 150 members, which is fantastic, right? Built together by so many people. And we could have never thought that this was possible, right? And a supremely, very well professionally run chapter as well. It's just not the members and the numbers, but also certain professionalism. So I think that was that. And then when, the next question was, okay, what next? And I said, okay, now that I am, I'm a master coach here and perfectly poised to bring that in to lead a chapter, to take it to the next level. And I knew it was going to, because that was also a very important time for building, to really take my practice to the next level. And again, right, we come back to the either or, this or that. And then I said, why not both? Right? I didn't think too much. I said, we'll figure it out. Right? And I swear I didn't know what I was getting into there. It was huge shoes to get into, right? Sometimes your own, you say something, you think you do, you jump in, and then you realize you're literally in the deep end. It's either swim or sink. And I don't like to sink.
Okay. You're prompting me out of restlessness at this point in time. I like what you said about when you give it, you become richer. And it's all about role making and making it more expansive. And voluntary loads, leadership roles don't come just on a platter, but then when you take it up with all the desire, intent, and the passion, you jump in and then realize there's confusion, but then you go beyond confusion, not to give it up. You touched upon just now in your response about ecosystem. And I have a very interesting question about how do you really envision the realistic expectations of the ecosystem with numerous stakeholders, sometimes pulling in different directions, and you could have hit the crossroads many a time. How did you really manage yourself? How did you manage the entity around yourself? And how did the strategic vision remain unaltered, but maybe more embellished?
Great question, Uday. And honestly, voluntary leadership is not a bed of roses. And I think I realized it. I won't say the hard way, through experience, right? I mean, the greatest lessons comes through your experiences, not out of textbooks or through others' experiences, right? And this whole thing, right? And I know you talked about it earlier, PMC mentioned it. While volunteer leadership is leadership, right? You are doing all those things, starting with self-leadership to leading others to everything else. And yet there are differences because of the whole looseness of this model, which is also its strength, right? If this thing was so structured to a fault, it's very difficult to honor the spirit of voluntarism. So it's like, a large joint family system, right? There's a lot of looseness, but there's also some unstated rules. And there's some attempts at professionalizing. So I would call it like the modern joint family system, right? So in a way, volunteer ecosystems are like that. You need that bit of looseness and space, right? Because at the end of the day, people are doing it because they want to do it, right? It's from the heart. And I'm going to make a bold statement here, right? In my experience, again, this is my worldview, I've never seen a volunteer leader sort of be fulfilled and be successful, right? Looking at ROI and what's in it for me. And I can say that, right? And I know this is an ROI-driven world. Before we think of what we give, we always think of how much more am I going to get? Fair enough. But that never adds to the success factor in this kind of a system. You give because you feel like giving, right? And my experience says often you get 2x, 10x. It depends on how you view the 2x and 10x. Don't view it conventionally. If you're looking at the next big promotion or the next big award, this one's not going to give it to you, right? But if you're looking at something else, can I become a better person? Can I become a tougher person? Can I be more resilient? Have I grown? Hell yes. So coming back to the original question that you asked, which is about navigating these. So the navigation, I think the best way is to embrace it. Saying that, yeah, this is not going to be perfect, right? There are not even many stated rules of engagement between volunteer leaders. It's loose, right? And I've actually had people sort of telling me sometimes that, you know what, yes, I committed to this meeting, or I committed to do this, but work came up. My boss called me. And it's got dropped like a hot cake. Initially, I used to be concerned about it, right? I used to even be a little judgmental, saying that that's not right. Would we do that with our clients? Would we do that? Why is this being treated as a +1? Right? Commitment is a commitment because you chose to give it. So how do we detach professionalism at times? So all those questions used to come to my head. The point I'm trying to say is that will always be there. This is not a perfect world. You will have people like that. But can you go ahead with your intrinsic drive and motivation saying, okay, that didn't happen. It got dropped. Can I cover for it? Do I want it badly enough to jump in, roll up my sleeves and do it? Or, reach out to 2 other people and say, hey, can you come and help me? That's the other thing, right? Asking help, ask help, asking. I've never asked for so much help in my life as I've done in the last couple of years. Okay. And that's not something that's really my go-to. There are many people here sitting in this very room who I've, picked up the phone and I said, I'm stuck, or this has happened. So-and-so, this has not happened. Can you please come and do this for me? 9 out of 10 times, the answer will be a yes. Because they know you're asking this not for yourself, but for the system. So I think a certain level of acceptance, equanimity, dealing with your own frustrations, and to say, can I just go beyond? Can I somehow, there's this word called jugaad, right? In Hindi. This ecosystem is a lot of jugaad. And the conclave, the ICF India conclave, I'm with a group of well-meaning friends and leaders here, and I'm saying this. We had so many resistances, right? So it's like that snake and ladder game, right? You go up, you fall down, and you quickly find the next ladder. You go up, you fall down. Worst case, somebody will push you down. Right? Not because they want to push you down, but because there's no space for you and it's not important enough. So persistence, patience, and perspective. Look at it in perspective. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. There's like thousands of volunteers out there. If 1 or 2 people, and I remember at one point of time in the conclave, Uday, out of the, in the board team itself, which was leading the conclave, right? Apart from hundreds of other volunteers from outside, different parts of the ecosystem. We had 80% of the board down with COVID or families, right? So I remember people would actually come back and say, just drop the conclave. It's okay, right? It doesn't matter, but it does matter. We've given commitments to people. And if a conclave done well, this at that point of time could collectively raise the confidence and, be such a boost for so many people out there, right? And the topic was coaching for growth, so relevant in the pandemic. So it's to constantly keep shifting your frames of reference without ever losing track of your North Star, right? I think that's the way you manage these complexities and, I would say conflicts.
Listening to you, Vijaya, I'm impatient to say this. I developed a model recently on how leadership ought to combine audacity and tenacity. In some way or the other, in your response now, you've preempted another question of mine. Before I come to that, you preempted the question of mine, the secret of your sauce to pull out volunteers from thin air. I've seen you doing that. And out comes your response saying that many a time how you managed navigated and help yourself without really buckling down. Therefore, this connects to the model that I'm making, which I made recently. Highly audacious, which is brave, and not being tenacious would be being obstinate as a leader. By being being low on tenacity and audacity would be indecisive, which means you defer decisions. But then if you're too much into audacity and very less of tenacity, it would mean being very risky, blind risk. But what I consider you in this conversation, which gets reinforced for me about this model, is that you are a gritty leader. A great combination of audacity and tenacity, which implies being resolute, bold, fearless, confident, assured to move on and step on the gas continuously. Does this ring a bell somewhere? Stepping on the gas? Because I believe even with all the daunting demands and challenges and contingents that arose, you moved on to set higher and higher benchmarks collectively with a shared leadership which emerged along with you, which includes yours truly. I followed you. I had no qualms in saying age-wise, I would be, ranked senior to you, but I followed you because you were ensuring credibility as a leader, walking the talk with the spirit. And combining audacity and tenacity is rare in my experience in work in the company, both in facilitation OD work and in coaching. Would you like to say something about this?
I think you've said it so beautifully that I don't have much to add, Uday, but I want to just give that example, right? And you talked about role making and role taking in the conclave, and this is something we have shared. One of our, very, very seasoned hosts and session hosts who was managing, 4 sessions or 3 sessions, right, had a severe, sudden medical issue. And it was just so heartbreaking, one, because, that person was going through that. But equally so, these sessions were curated and owned by that person. It's like a chef preparing a beautiful meal. At the time of service, the chef is missing. And I do remember, and at that point of time,
but the meal didn't go missing.
Yeah, was it stressful? Yes, it was stressful. I'd be lying if I said I was cool as a cucumber. I was not. Okay. But for me, the simplest thing was I remember picking up the phone and saying, and I think I didn't give you a choice, right? And I think that's where seeing that potential and having faith in your team and your people and your co-travelers is so important. What's the worst that would happen? That session would not go the way it was envisaged, but perhaps it would be better. But would we show up? Of course we'd show up. Showing up is more important always than expecting the perfect outcome, right? Even in coaching, we do that. So I remember picking up, and this is to everyone here, and that's also something amazing, right? In volunteer leadership, that you don't say no. When you can say yes, say yes. And some of us don't like to say no in a good way. And Uday was one of those. I remember I picked up the phone and I didn't sort of ask him, right? I mean, I was in a way telling him, but he could have just challenged me and pushed back. And I said, Uday, this is a situation. How many can you do? And he had his own plate full. And many of you may or may not know this. Uday is somebody who works damn hard and prepares for even a little thing that he has to do. I know how much he's prepared for today's session, right? Always being in flow. He would never fault on that. So he had his plate full. And yet when I went to him and I said, Uday, not a word, right? So you just got to trust and then leave it to Uday. And it was one of our best sessions. I remember 2 of them in particular. Similarly, there was somebody else who was not part of the front stage, right? There's backstage and front stage. I just said, you know this topic. Will you do it? The first answer was no. I said, no, I think you should do it. And boom, that was another fabulous session. So I think audacity, tenacity, is also about the way you apply it, right? Uday? And to say that, okay, the world gives you lemons, let's make lemon juice.
I know. I'm conscious also about the time that we have on hand at disposal, the PMC, before he gives us the alert 5 minutes from now. Let me jumpstart into something towards the business end of this conversation between us. When I say business end, not about commercial things, but about the tone that we'd like to end. What are your thoughts about core values which can't be compromised when you take on and perform, practice, and execute volunteer leadership? Keeping in mind the vision, which could be changing, but then the overarching vision to be achieved. And aside to that also, if you want to talk about what is something which you would not like it to happen, because I've experienced cliques in organizations, I've experienced coteries, I've experienced silos, so all that would be also part of the human beingness in the ecosystem. So what are your do's and don'ts which you would like to recommend and help this group connect with you?
Thank you, Uday. And for this one, I think I will again take a couple of minutes to talk through. Before we get into values, I think, this session is also about vision. And while I know PMC said it's all, we're not looking at the textbook definitions of anything, right? To me, a vision is a dream, right? And irrespective of who you are, how small you are or how big you are, it's okay to have a dream, right? and you dream from your heart. Often we don't dream from our head. Sometimes we don't recognize that voice that says, so for example, grow the vision of ICF Chennai. Such a simple 4-letter word, but something that everybody wants, right? So universal. So much so that apart from our members and associates, we had people from outside the ecosystem who would identify with this vision. And a vision really needs to be that. But let's remember, the more grand, the more lofty, the more unreachable your vision is, it's going to get even harder on ground to try to get closer. And that's where values come in. Values, it's good to call out your values. And, ICF Chennai has 7 values, for example. But the important thing is, how do you take it from being a set of nice looking things on paper and walk the talk? And usually the walking the talk will actually happen when you're challenged. Right? So for example, I want to just share a small example, right? Inclusion is so important as a value in this chapter. So much so that you can become a member of this chapter sitting anywhere in the world, right? But from an organizer point of view, an institution point of view, it's very hard to walk the talk on inclusion. It's very tempting to go by numbers and say, okay, 99 people are from here. One doesn't fit this bill. So let's serve the 99. But that's not inclusion, right? So either you go drop it from your set of values, which meant you were never authentic in the first place, or do what it takes to live that, right? And there'll be enough reasons given to you, commercial, practical, all of that, right? But I think it's important to live that. So in a recent event we did, which was an in-person event, one of the things we were so particular, PMC and I, who were really creating this event, was not one person should feel left out. So we went ahead and decided to do the whole thing on Zoom as well, which tremendously added to the cost of the event. And while we had 70 plus people coming in person, we had 4 people who attended virtually, including yourself, Uday. But I know we could all sleep well at night because the money we spent for the 4 would never justify the ROI. Was it the correct thing to do? Absolutely. Right? And I think that's where these conflicts come into play. Do you really want to uphold it or not? And when you do that, I think it increases the collective conscience and confidence both. Right? Because what happened that evening was magical. 4 people sitting, on a screen and 70 people sitting in a room together created something historic and beautiful, right? We were meeting for the first time after 3 years. Similarly, with Coaches for You, which is a movement I'm so proud to be a part of. A lot of volunteer friends are here. And I call it a movement because it's not even an organization. It's a collective, which has, kept at it for 3 years now. More than 3 years. Amazing, isn't it? And so many times we were challenged saying, no, I think put a cost to it, charge for the coaching, and many things that went ahead against the fundamental grain of the movement, which was coaching at no cost, right? Which was to be there as a response to people who needed emotional and mental support. And we held strong at every stage. So much so today that the system is going on, right? And we are being able to be true to those values of genuinely this being pro bono. So I think values is at the heart of volunteer leadership, because it is so easy to go astray. In organizations, you have value champions who keep on holding the light, right? Who either police you or motivate you. In volunteer leadership, you are the only police and you're the only motivator. Another beautiful favorite, go-to quote for mine is, character is not what you are, under the limelights. It's what you are in the dark when you're alone. So volunteer leadership demands so much more character, so much more, tenacity, audacity towards your vision and tenacity towards your values. Right? Not a bed of roses, but I can tell you one thing, Uday, I come to the second segment of what you asked. The kind of satisfaction, the kind of joy, the kind of contribution, the kind of friendships right? Because these are friendships beyond roles, beyond organization structures, beyond norms. Some of the friends I have in Coaches for You, or even in ICF Chennai, right, are people I've never met before. But I know for sure if I visit that city ever once, these people will host me for a cup of tea, and I would do that. Recently, that happened with one of our volunteers from CFY who had come down. And it is that larger cause that brings you together, right? Beyond all the boundaries of, age, religion, creed, caste, whatever it is, right? Geography. So some of the things you get in volunteer leadership, and I can tell you, despite all the struggles, is something you cannot compare. You've got to experience it. And so here's my appeal to everyone here. In your own little way, right? It doesn't have to be a formal role. It doesn't have to be anything. And I know so many volunteers who never wanted to come in front and wear a badge or a tag or a name. But they contribute in ways that's unimaginable. And perhaps that's one of the reasons that inspires me to keep going, Uday. There have been moments when I've actually said, why am I doing all this? Right? Because sometimes it feels like it comes at a cost of your work, your family, your health. But you just need to look at it systemically. Sometimes you feel like you're losing something, right? Only to gain something so much bigger.
I'm again mindful of time. Vijay, whatever you've been sharing so far, and particularly the last response, you reached out, I'm sure, to this audience beyond what they would have fathomed when they came into the session. I can be very intuitively sensing that and saying that with conviction, because you spoke a lot about values being grounded, humility. It's important to be in a volunteer leader role to really safeguard those values and shine out there by being yourself. And it brought me back a couple of models. One is Abraham Maslow's self-actualization model. From that roti kapda makan, the bottom of the pyramid, to the self-actualization, social needs, self-esteem needs. And then I think you also mentioned earlier on saying that you don't look for results, but let it happen the way it is. And it's a tipping point. And I'm also remembering Peter Senge's work on learning organization, when he brought in elements about moving targets and learning and all that. We talked about mental models. You had a conceived vision, which you were flexible about. There was team learning. There was shared leadership. There was personal mastery about you being in that role, and how did you fathom others about how they were performing the roles, and more importantly, thinking ahead, never giving up. Well, I would ask more questions till the cows come home, but I would need a hard stop with you. Please do understand, it's been a very empowering conversation that I had with you today. And I have benefited, I've gained, and thanks for enabling me to grow in this process. PMC, thanks for being patient for me to give it back to you. Thank you, Vijay, for whatever you shared and whatever you poured from your heart.
Uday, I just have one, PMC, I'm going to take a couple of minutes, if you don't mind.
Please.
Because I think this conversation will not be well-rounded if I don't do that. One thing which I want to share as a parting thought in the moment, right? Thank you to Uday and this beautiful space. I mean, I know there's messages coming on the chat box. It's also given me the confidence to say, I remember I wanted to be honest. I think I have. I don't know how it's going to sound when I go back and listen to the recording, because sometimes the most honest truths come in the moment. Having said that, I just want to leave off with one thing, that if there's a voice in your head that tells you that there's work to be done, if there's a voice that kind of tells you you're not comfortable with status quo, or that tells you that, I can do more, then I certainly would invite you to listen to that voice and give it any shape and form. It may not fit into the acceptable models today, but I think the universe always conspires. And that's the thought I want to leave with. But before I do that, I'm just going to invite a few people here on stage just for a couple of, seconds each, and maybe just share in one word, because these are all people, and I'm sort of not trying to exclude anyone here, but I just see a few names, just to say that, as to why you show up as a volunteer leader, right? Why do you volunteer? What difference does that make to you? I mean, and if you can give your very quick answer to that, it would be lovely. And again, I'm saying this is not to exclude anyone, and I'm willing to, I'd be so happy and privileged to be around here for even more than time to listen to each one of you, because I know if you're staying here for 90 minutes, there's some voice in you that's drawing you here, right? And it's certainly not me or Uday or PMC or anything. It's something deeper inside. So I'm first, and I'm doing this as I see on my screen. I'm going to call my friend Mani, who's joined from DC, and I know Mani has really lived this value. Mani, if you can share, why you raise your hand, that would be great.
Wow. Thanks, Vijay. I think I didn't expect this, but by the way, thanks for putting me on the hot seat. I was talking to Uday this morning, and he beautifully, I'll quote Uday on Uday himself. He said, as we need not be a celebrity to be celebrated. Each one of us in this room are to be celebrated. So let's not be looking for celebrityness, which is what Vijay has become. I keep joking with her that she's become a celebrity among us right now. So beautiful, well done. And Uday said it best, that we need not be celebrated. So that's one of the reasons for me. I'd rather be on the shadows and do some work, small work, whatever that I enjoy. And I'm not a limelight type of person. So that's what makes me think. And one last piece I would say to Uday, your play of words is amazing, especially today. It's much more in a flow. So I'm enjoying it, greatly appreciating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mani. Jeff, with your permission, I would love for you to share, a few words. Jeff has been, I would say, a veteran volunteer leader. He serves in multiple capacities. He's from ICF Malaysia. Jeff, if you're around, please could you say, what gets you going to volunteer and to lead?
Yes, thank you, Vijay. I've seen you in action, and like what you did say, I'm your follower. You have all the presence, conclave, you were there all the time. Every time I went into the session, you were there. Yeah, I don't know how you did it, but that's wonderful. For me, serving 6 years with ICF Malaysia Chapter, we were lucky to get 2 years in a row the ICF Recognition Award, but it has been fulfilling. I think the word is what you say. It has built relationships. It has been, the value is tremendous, it's priceless. There are more people who come in and say, I appreciate what you guys are putting in. I know it's hard work. Of course, there are a few people who say, why are you doing this? Then I'll say, why not? Yeah, thank you, Vijay. It's been a nice journey. I can see you there, and thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Jeff. You inspire us. Thank you, Jeff. I'm now going to invite Baburaj, who has, come in formally as a volunteer leader into ICF now, but I know he brings in so many other experiences. Baburaj, what kind of gets you to raise your hand?
I'm in a dark corner here, listening to both the diamonds, like PMC said, and Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya, So from the darkness, I'm coming into light by listening to both of you. But the simple question, because I was part of a lot of social work with the education sector, and also with activists and all other aspects. So when according to me, volunteerism is an element of choice. It's a choice of giving. And I always believe that if you start giving, when I was part of the National Executive Secretary of National Charter Network, where I got connected with Uday almost 2 decades back, or connected with you, I always believe that if you give, and the return will be, almost unimaginable. and the joy which you will get it also, and you don't need to look at it. That's why when you talked about ROI, I said that it is actually not return on investment. It is I on the return, and because I can believe that it is the return is defined by me, and because I don't need to, it will automatically will come, and it is too huge. And the value of relationship, when you talk about it, the value of enrichment in the volunteerism is too high. And you take any leaders who are volunteers worldwide, who is remembered for the work which has been done. You take Nelson Mandela, you take any person whom you believe, it is the selfishness which has created the legacy around them. It is not they have expected something. So when you asked me for it, it is an opportunity for me to add some value, whatever little value, which I think I can give it to the institute, which you are creating. I'm calling it as an institution because it's an institution, and ICF as a charter as well as a global level. And therefore, I believe, I also feel that it is an ABC to XYZ. So the alphabetics, as a volunteerism, as a values, I will say that it is acceptance, belief in your own self, and a conviction. You know, the ABC, the conviction of doing something which you can, you believe that you can, because there are people around you to support you. And XYZ, when I'm talking about it, it brings an excellence in you, which you are not even aware of it. It is automatically reaches you to it. And you earn to give more now. Earlier you were giving and you wanted to give, earning to give more. And the last one, zeal, the colleagues around you create so much energy. The zeal in you is much more. So we become younger actually being a volunteer. So I always thank you for, reaching out to me, for being part of ICF. And also I would love to, express my thanks to and gratefulness to all the friends which I created in the last few months of associating with ICF. And it was a great journey for me, and continue to
Thank you.
add
Thank you,
value.
Baburaj. Thank you, Baburaj. I'm just going to call upon just 2 more people. PMC, please give me that extra time. I really would not do justice to this session if I didn't. Johnny, you always are there. You're there in every forum. You're there. You're showing up everywhere. You bring in your value. You add your presence. What drives you to do that, Johnny?
I think for me, that's the only way I've learned to live, and I've learned this from my late father. And I think anything that comes my way is through this, because I'm not an academician, I'm not a reader, I am a doer, and I connect with people and I learn from people. So that's
Thank you, Johnny. And I know there are so many of you here, but one person I definitely want to call who has, selflessly been there in the CFY system from, I would say, the early days. And Krishnan, if you can come on video, or if you can't. And Krishnan is somebody who's quietly working in the background, despite managing very, very hectic day job. Krishnan, what gets you to do your bit, Krishnan, and to lead this whole thing of volunteering?
When CFI was started, and I was privileged to be part of the initial gang which joined to set that up. It was a very interesting initiative, and that kind of, at that point I did have a lot of time as well, being COVID and lockdown and working from home, and just phones. At a certain point, as April went into May and into June, while we say people get into the zone, I didn't realize that even in volunteering you can get into the zone. That happened actually, which is something which I really loved. And at a certain point, I remember saying that this is how Karma Yoga really looks like. And because there was also this bit of interest in Vedanta and Bhagavad Gita and whatever else at that point in time. not for anything else, but because you're not going to office, there's a lot of time to read up, etc. And this was the practical example of what you can do with selflessly, without any expectation, nothing else. You have the time, go ahead, do it, and be happy that you're doing it. The job, what you do, is the reward that you get. And that's something which I really experienced and enjoyed. Unfortunately, I'm unable to do it today because of the physical movement here and there. And that focus and concentration that happened there is something which was just amazing. Thanks for everyone who's part of CFI. I saw Mani, I saw George, Cherian, and quite a few people who were part of that CFI. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Krishnan. PMC, there are many people I'd like to call and get them to learn there. Each of them has such a wealth of knowledge, but time is always a constraint. Like I said, I'm happy to hang around, but handing over back to you to share some of the things that you would like to and bring the session formally to a close.
What can I say? Thank you. As I always say, my thanks goes to the customers, in this case, my audience here, for turning up in large numbers and remaining in large numbers and continuously posting thoughtful comments and a few questions as well. And personally thanking Mani, Jeff, Babaraj, Johnny, and Krishnan for sharing their experiences and perspectives on what helped them or motivated them and do well as a volunteer leader themselves. And there are a few questions here by Murthy, Tarun, and Premnath. I think most their questions have been partly or to a very large extent answered by what has been the conversation between Vijay and Uday, and also by the experience sharing. So I am skipping those things. So coming to the stars of the show, Uday and Vijay, does the question make the show great or the answer makes the show great? I can't decide today. Incisive questions and inspiring answers, passionate, coming straight from the heart. I'm not saying it, the comments are saying that. So thank you very much for making it, both of you, for making it an extremely engaging, enlightening, energizing, and inspiring conversation. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And my colleagues in the chapter who made all possible help to make this show, the event possible. I have posted the CCEU link and the feedback page link open till 21st. So please apply, fill it up, and you'll get your CCUs. And before I close, one announcement. On October the 28th, we are having a mega event from ICF Chennai Charter Chapter. Please save the date, turn up in large numbers, and make us proud, as well as you will enjoy the 2 hours that we are planning for. October 28, 6:45 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. You will get details in mail and in our forum. Please save the date and be there. And thanking you, everybody, audience, Uday, Vijay, people who have been participating here, and those who spoke here once again. And with that, till we meet again on the 28th of this month, thank you and goodbye.